Hey everyone, I'm Panera, and I'm here with another Anatomy of StarCraft. I've got two guests with me this time, Dawncroft, the Blizzard MVP,
Hello?
and Fonzie, the newbie, I guess we can call him.
A
It's his first episode, so welcome. Again, keeping that open door policy of anybody is welcome to join us. Um, At any rate, we are here to talk about psionics. And in case you haven't seen it, up on the channel there is a new series called Mechanics of StarCraft, which is championed by Potatolisk and Zappy. And they did an awesome job. It actually makes me look kind of like I'm not doing my homework. So it's really good. Check it out. It's concise as well. It's not like 45 minutes or anything.
Yes, at long last, the Brotoss are being appeased for
Yes.
those like myself.
Yes, the Brotoss, and then they plan to do Terran as well. I don't know what the schedule and all that stuff is, but we'll see. Anyway, so psionics, we're going to kind of look at it from a biological perspective because I'm thinking that they kind of covered it with their first mechanics episode from the Protoss perspective, where it's like electromagnetism, and you'll have to watch it anyway because it's not my forte. So anyway, the Zerg, they use psionics, and I believe, Dawncroft, you have a definition that you...
I do. To keep the episode focused, the definition of psionics that we're talking about is communication between organic beings outside of the 5 known senses. It can project sound signals into the brain without audio receptor organs or ears. That's just an example of what it can do. Because we know that the Protoss and Zerg can both speak to other organic beings without using,
Yeah.
mouths and ears and all that.
Okay, well, you mentioned the 5 senses we know, and of course we're all familiar
Yes.
with it. I won't go over that again. However, there are organisms out there, insects being one of them, that use different senses that we don't have. Things like with their antennae, they're like a chemosensory. So it's not like smell, it's not like taste, it's something entirely different that they use to actually create something that's outside of normal vision, and it's not something you hear either, but they can create entire highways of pheromones. They have, it's very complex actually, from multiple different glands and things like that. So is that
But
something where...
for general classification purposes, that is tied into the smell, or what am I trying to say, the olfactory?
It's different from olfactory. It's an entirely separate chemosensory process. And then you also get things like the ampullae of Lorenzini on chondrichthyans, so sharks and rays and things like that, which actually they can communicate. Well, they can sniff out things under the sand. It's not really sniffing, I shouldn't use that word, but they can sense things, electrical fields and things like that.
Yeah.
But that isn't what the Protoss or the Zerg are doing, because they can communicate, for instance, through a vacuum of space,
Yes.
or through the hulls of ships, and chemical, that kind of what you were just talking about, I don't know the terminology, isn't really the explanation for it. It's some kind of direct communication somehow from one's brain to another's brain. It's basically telepathy, the old subject of, telepathy or psychics, but we're approaching it from a scientific perspective.
And how do you propose we do that?
I remember you were talking about the electromagnetism that was addressed. If we're talking about, basically everything in the brain is electronic signals, isn't it?
Yeah,
Carried by
some of that as well as
and chemicals.
There's also some chemosensing stuff. So it's like sodium channels and things like that, as far as nerves are concerned.
So if there was a way to send an electronic signal from one brain to another that would basically stimulate the audio receptors, but bypass the eardrum itself, etc. After all, Protoss don't have ears that we know of.
They might have tympanic membrane or something. I'd have to look.
They may. We don't know. Then that kind of communication, telepathy, would be possible. You'd hear a voice in your head that wasn't coming through your ears.
Well, there is an example I can think of called the elephant nose fish, and these are very common in the pet trade. They also are common in neurology studies because they actually communicate with each other using just electrical signals. And as a result of this rather advanced communication, they have the second highest encephalization quotient, which means the second highest brain size to body size ratio of any living animal other than humans.
Now, what we do know about the Protoss biologically, as far as psionics go, is that their head tails, I don't know what to call them, those large horn-like hairs that come out of the back of their heads have a great deal to do with it.
Yeah.
But only in relation to other Protoss. It's called the Kala, which binds them all together. And we know that the Dark Templar severed their whatever they're called. I should have the term ready, but I don't. To break away from the Kala.
Mm-hmm. So then how would they go about communicating if that's the way in which the Protoss biologically are communicating? And
because the Kala is a deeper form of the Protoss psionics. The Kala communicates more than just words. It communicates emotions, feelings, impulses, even strength, inner strength. It binds them all together in a communal sort of way, so that they're never really alone.
So when they submit to this Kala thing, it's almost like a superorganism, like we've talked about with ants, mm-hmm. or like analogous to, say, the Borg, where they've got all these voices going on in their head. I
would call it a super commune. It's not because as organisms they're separate, but as a commune or as a consciousness, while they may have individuals, they work together much better than, say, humans do, which we have to pass orders directly through sound.
Yeah, that is exactly basically the definition of a superorganism, as well as, I guess, the Borg too. I mean, they are individuals, but they function as a whole, rather than functioning. They might do individual tasks, but it's to benefit the whole.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry. I always looked at it like a series of computers, how they communicate. They're all hooked up to a network of servers, but they're not necessarily all processing the same information all at once and then sending it to each other all at once. It's refined by each computer, essentially, what it receives and what it sends, but it can access any information or knowledge at will amongst each other.
Well, if you were going to use that analogy, I guess you would use like the Kala as one great big server.
Yeah.
Kind of. Where there is no direct mainframe. There's no mainframe. It's all just shared throughout every individual machine. Whereas the Zerg would be much more like a mainframe because they have data centers and control centers much more specifically than the Protoss do.
That seems inherently easy to corrupt, though, as far as from the Kala's point of view. I mean,
extremely. Yeah.
Like, you could have some malicious ghost who, gets this idea of, okay, well, I'm going to screw over all the High Templar because I'm sick of them feedbacking me or whatever.
I thought you were referring to the Zerg.
Well, the Zerg is... The thing with the Zerg is that, well, they are a hive mind. What they can probably do is just sever, so the Overlord can stop sending those signals to a Zergling if there's a problem and just cut it off, right? Or they can cut off entire Cerebrits, for example, which we've seen when you get like the rogue Cerebrits and stuff like that. They kind of just say, okay, well, you're no longer part of this. Whereas the Kala, it seems, because of the way that you're proposing it, like sort of like they're this sort of shared mental commune, if you get mm-hmm. something in there, say like a really mean Terran ghost that comes in and sort of starts implanting some of these sort of negative ideas or just sort of derail. Think of it like a community on the internet where you get that one troll that comes in and just derails everything. It can maybe be seen as something like that.
There is a moment that a lot of the old StarCraft nerds will remember. It's a cinematic, which I believe is called The Death of Phoenix. And mm-hmm. it's at the end of the third mission in the original Protoss campaign. And basically Phoenix is guarding a Protoss temple. Mm-hmm. The creep starts to drip down, and all of a sudden he's facing 3 Hydralisks. And he's a very powerful warrior, so he activates his psionic blades. And he's about to go at it, and all of a sudden the psionic blades fizzle out, and he looks at it in surprise.
Yeah.
At least what we perceive as surprise. And many theories have been made about that. what most people think is that something the Zerg was doing was disrupting his connection from the Kala, and the shock of that was basically knocked the concentration he needed to maintain his weapons and his shields and allowed a mere 3 Hydralisk to overcome such a powerful Praetor.
Or perhaps it's they were able to block the technology from being used by whatever this extrasensory ability is.
That's also possible. So what we were saying about the inherent weakness of that, yes, the same thing can be done by a Terran Ghost in the PvT matchup with the electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah.
Which actually leads me to believe, since EMP fries out or interacts in a negative way with electronics and things that I really don't understand. I just know if an EMP goes off by my computer, then you're going to have a bad time. Basically, would that not suggest that this is electronic based, as far as if they're using this whatever Kala to make shields?
Oh, certainly. For instance, Terrans in the presence of an Archon actually often suffer brain failure because of the energies that, well, they don't really understand it, but it just causes brain failure.
Probably
in close proximity. Yeah, it's probably short-circuiting the brain.
Actually, there is some precedent for that in nature. If you look at, well, this is actually a hypothesis, that there's something called colony collapse disorder in bees. And the idea is that they can't find a parasite that's causing these 50% of colonies to spontaneously die. What they have found in one study, they put a cell phone on either side of an active colony and did just a call between the cell phones for about 15 minutes a day, and the colony collapsed. So they're suggesting that perhaps this, I guess, electromagnetic, whatever, radio emissions or whatever specific it is from cell phones, is interfering with their ability to communicate and function properly. And
so it's the Terrans' fault that the Protoss are going extinct right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're darn communication devices. It's all their. I knew it too.
It's not the Zerg. Yeah, screw that. I mean.
No, it's Manx. It's always Manx. Him and his stupid news network.
Yeah, no kidding. What's up with that?
Yeah, it is.
I think
He's just trying to look out for everyone's best interests. He's a good guy.
Yeah. That deep down, he's a really good guy. Not like his son. Ugh, that guy's a wiener.
Oh yeah.
So I think we've established that this is some sort of bioelectrical thing, and it's probably not necessary. It might have a chemical start where you've got chemical interactions, and they're harnessing things like van der Waals forces or ionic bonds or things like that can create some sort of charge anyway.
And it's built into the Protoss in an interesting way. They don't really understand it on a scientific perspective, or at least they've never attempted to understand it. However, they control it at a level that the Terran sciences cannot, just naturally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they were designed to do this, and
well, they were.
Essentially, they were
by the Xel'Naga. Yeah, exactly.
So basically, what I'm seeing is this is it's probably a chemical precursor in their brains or in their bodies that they can use to send out different frequencies of electrical signals, similar to what we talked about with the elephant-nosed fish. Different strengths or frequencies or whatever mean different things. Panic or food or let's do it or whatever. And you can actually evolve that to be very complex, especially if you broaden, it to say length of signal. So, you send a 1 second signal at this frequency, that might mean, incoming Zerglings or something like that, right? You can make it rather complex, which explains, of course, why the elephant-nosed fish has such a giant encephalization quotient, because you need it. It's a very, very resource-intensive way of communicating. But it can also be very precise. And it seems that this is an innate ability that they have, which the Xel'Naga, sort of picked up on and started to guide their evolution. And
if I could quote I'd actually like to quote the wiki on this one.
Yep.
It says right here, in their quest to create the perfect life form, the Xel'Naga came to Ire, one of their engineered worlds, and discovered the Protoss. The Protoss possessed many favorable traits, but most distinct of all was their psionic link, a form of instinctive telepathy that enabled them to communicate with one another and work together efficiently, even in large groups. The Xel'Naga saw the Protoss as suitable for further elevation. So.
So it seems like it's just this ability that's been evolved to the point where they can now use it to manipulate, say, make like an electromagnetic blade on their arm, like the psi blades, right? And I think that the word psionic is probably more of a vernacular thing, like they're calling it psionics, right? It's kind of like how if a person in the 9th century saw me driving my car and talking or using my smartphone, assuming there was still all the infrastructure and stuff like that to be able to support it, they would honestly say that that's magic. They wouldn't understand, because a lot of times these ideas and abilities are built, they say things like discoveries are built on the shoulders of giants, meaning that like without, the discovery of electricity, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, right? So we have them to thank, and we have the people who made the microprocessor, superconductors, and all this stuff, right? So it's kind of like, if you're a Terran, and from our perspective as well, kind of looking at it sort of from the outside and going, okay, how do you use this fantastic technology? But it seems that a lot of it, aside from things like thermal lances and whatever, but it seems like a lot of it is grounded in this inherent electrochemical ability.
It's derived from the parapsychological term psi, which refers to like the psyche, the mind.
Yep.
So it's all abilities that somehow tie into the brain or the mind.
Yeah. So basically that's a really, and we've seen this before in video game development and stuff like that. We're not talking about like Warcraft where they legitimately have magic and things like that. It's where game developers go, hey, I've got this really cool idea, and they don't necessarily flesh it out because they don't have the background knowledge or the, and it's just easier to call it the Kala, right? Rather than saying, well, this is an inherent electrochemical ability that the Protoss have, and it's something that they can channel. Maybe they have electrochemical pores all over their body, and they've learned to sort of strengthen them in certain areas to make psi blades or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. To specify, the Kala means in the Protoss language path to ascension, and it is basically the control of their psionic communal link via a religious discipline, which is the Kala.
So effectively,
path.
It's training their neural pathways and electrochemical abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be, I could see how that could easily be turned into a religious behavior or activity.
Mm-hmm. Considering its communal nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like, meditating and things like that can be incorporated into just about any practical. You could be a car developer and be like, okay, I want to make a new motor, and so spend some time doing that, and then some time, going to, your car church made of car motors and praying or doing a dance or doing a backflip or whatever, right? There's a lot of different ways that a religion can manifest. So I don't think we should necessarily focus on, okay, well, it's this mystical power coming from the religion. I think that that's more of a side effect from their culture.
We need a religion that does backflips.
We really do.
That would be some very fit and very entertaining people. I mean,
we got the Buddhist
those
monks.
services. Just
let's call it Leeism after Bruce Lee. Done.
Wow.
That sounds legit.
I think we can get at least 3 followers in the next year or so.
Well, we've got about 150 subscribers at this time.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Do backflips, guys. Do backflips, but do it religiously.
Yeah. And also safety first. Wear a helmet.
Yes, wear a helmet. No, but we need a term for the helmet though. We need to call it your kalaba or something.
Yeah, something mystical.
Your holy kalaba, which protects from mistake.
Okay. So
Yeah. Anyways.
So we're sort of starting to run out of time a little bit here, but I just want to sort of complete the picture because this has actually been a really interesting discussion, something that is a lot of people would look at psionics, and I myself had wrote it off as saying, okay, well, we won't deal with mysticism in this series. We've sort of broken it down to the point where now it looks like it's more of a practical ability that has been sort of revamped. Think of it like, in a way, think of it almost like our opposable thumbs. We had our opposable thumbs in order to manipulate, say, tree branches or something like that down early in evolution. And what ended up happening was, combined with our brain and our ability to teach each other and train each other and come up with new ideas, we were able to use our thumbs to eventually help us go to the moon.
And now we can use them to hit the space bar to do those injects. going
Yeah.
fast in
That's so
PvZ.
that's so important.
Rebind that backspace key, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Well, mostly boys, but I know you girls are out there. Okay,
Oh,
do
yeah.
it. You do it too. We
Yeah.
haven't forgotten you.
Yeah. We in fact think about you more than you think about it.
Mm.
So anyway,
Some days.
yeah, some days for sure. So anyway, it's this will actually be it's almost an episode that should be gone along as a companion episode to the very first Mechanics of StarCraft episode, because they talk very much so about Light versus Dark Templar abilities and things like that. So definitely check that one out.
I'll have to put the link in the description there.
Oh, absolutely I will. And it's actually the video just before this on my channel. So you can also, be lazy and look that way, or I'll put a link up anyway. And I think what we're ultimately going to do is join up with the Mechanics of StarCraft guys again, and we're going to maybe revisit this at a later time.
Yeah. Check it out, guys. Support the Nerd Chat movement, okay?
Yeah.
We got something going here. So come on, click that link.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And the best thing you can do now, tell your friends, if you think they're nerds or they like StarCraft or anything like that. And as I've said, we're going to be covering things like Warhammer and other things like that in the future. Just any alien you can think of, really. We've done the Xenomorphs from Aliens. We have yet to finish them. And anyway, so yeah, leave your suggestions, leave your comments, leave your questions. If you want to volunteer in any capacity, whether that's sending me an email, or like a PM or just a comment on the channel, that's great. If you want to be on a show, I mean, as we've shown today, Fonzie's first episode. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And if you want to brainstorm an idea but don't mind a little chaos, post it on the StarCraft forums, www.starcraft2.com /general discussion, I believe.
Yeah, and just Google Anatomy of StarCraft or Mechanics of StarCraft. Both
hit it up.
Fantastic threads. So, anyways, this has been one of I'm sure many psionic discussions that's going to be had, because it's a very big issue in the lore. So, thanks for listening.